ESO is in a weird spot right now. Some players are frustrated with the changes, some players are loving the new changes, but I think the community in general is loud about one thing kind of in unison, and that is some of the same problems continuing to pop up in game update after update. But here's the thing, every single one of these problems actually has a clear path forward. So today I want to break down some of the biggest pain points I have seen a lot of people in the community talking about really since the start of this year. And more importantly, how ZOS could really turn each one of these issues into a big win for the game. Today we're going to talk about the state of ESO, not just what's wrong, but how the game could genuinely improve if ZOS leans into the right changes, like the developers have been talking about all year long. That is the one thing here that I think we can kind of take away from this as a community that can get fixed. The devs have been doing a really good job with communicating. The devs have been adding some really good quality of life changes and some other fixes into the game. And I know not everyone's going to agree on every single thing that they change. That's just a given in any video game. But the complaints that the player base has pretty much seems to be something that all of the community shares an opinion on, and it's the same opinion. They don't like these same issues cropping in or popping up inside of ESO each and every single update for years now. One of the first complaints that I see a lot of players talking about lately is the ESO reward system just does not feel rewarding, and that's even including the new tome battle pass system that we have in game. But if I go in to kind of just look at players grinding dungeons, trials, PvP, and PvP has been improved a bit with the new veterancy system. I still think there could be some improvements there from the things that I have been reading within the community. But even events, a lot of people feel that the payoff often feels outdated or underwhelming. But there is a positive side to this. ESO is already experimenting with systems that really could fix this problem pretty easily. I think expanding the new Gold Coast Bazaar into a true evergreen reward hub like the devs have talked about since they first mentioned the Gold Bazaar would be a massive fix. Also, adding long term account wide progression rewards, that is something players have talked about for a while. Rotating high value cosmetics more frequently. That way, players still have access to, let's use the example of the furnishing vendor. The furnishing vendor has been in the game for a long time. If you're a housing fan, you've played ESO from the start or even for the last 5 or 6 years, most everything the furnishing vendor offers every Friday you would already have, except that one new item that he does bring in. Rotating more high value things into the game, cosmetic wise, for players to get, whether it's anything from furnishings to skins to just mounts, even maybe at the stables now that we have the option to buy some nicer mounts. I think rotating those things in that are higher value items, players would really enjoy that. And I think scaling rewards somehow based on difficulty, and that is something they're wanting to do. I think with this new challenge difficulty overland system, they talked about they don't want it to be just XP and gold going forward. They're going to have to look into how to do that. But I think scaling those rewards would be a great thing. Also, looking at things like dungeons and trials, over the years, the rewards for playing those on a harder challenge kind of mode is not really rewarding. Trials used to have some insane rewards for your trifecta runs and things like that. Some great mounts, some great skins. And the trials community will tell you the last several trials have not really had anything that impressive to get. The same could be said for dungeons. If you go in and do a vet dungeon, do everything that you can to increase that difficulty while playing that, no death runs, that kind of stuff. I do think those rewards should be something that players really want to strive for if that's the kind of thing they're into, and not just something that's just a reward that they feel like wasn't even worth getting, besides doing it on a harder difficulty. Some players just like that, but you want to have that reward be something that you actually can show off in game. And I think changing that philosophy going forward would be a great thing too. If they would push in this direction, and the devs have talked about a lot of these changes over the last several months, ESO could end up with a very flexible and player friendly reward system. And I think that's what everyone in the community wants. The next thing I see a lot of players talk about, and this has been a long time conversation, but I have seen this a lot over the last several months, and that is limited time events. Some people like the events, or as many as we have. Some people say there's too much going on in games, so it's event fatigue. The devs have even talked about event fatigue recently in some of their live streams, talking about shortening some events now to, things that used to be 2 weeks now or 1 week, trying to make sure that players don't have event fatigue but still have things to do. But I think even though the night market may not have gone over as well as ZOS was hoping, the event zone shows that ZOS is experimenting with something bigger than just do dailies and get, tickets or gold bars now. And I think the positive thing you could take away from that is fewer events or shorter timed events, but higher quality events and rewards. Also, catch up mechanics. So, missing, a certain time during this event, a day or two, whatever the case may be there, it doesn't punish players. Event rewards also moved into permanent systems after the event is over, like the bazaar, and seasonal content that evolves instead of resets. That is once again kind of leaning into that same idea where I was talking about the furnishing vendor or some of the items being the same thing that players have seen forever. I'm hoping eventually we see some of the event rewards for our seasonal content really evolve into something new instead of just being the same thing year in and year out. And they've already done that with some of the challenges and things you do during these events. They've mixed that up, but I think the entire system could use a rework, and it wouldn't really have to be anything too crazy, but some new quests to go in and do in each event would be great. And they've already started working on that, like I said, but also new rewards and not just one or two things, a good bit of new things for players to strive for. And that way, like I said, you can put some of these event rewards into like the bazaar, especially for players that are brand new. You can have some of the older rewards so they can make sure that they get these things that they may have missed out on in years past, but also you have brand new things in there for everyone. And the big one here, and this one is the one that's, I think, going to be the hardest to really adjust, and that is combat balance. It has been an absolute roller coaster over the years. Every update seems to shake up a class. Players don't always understand the direction. Some players like it, some players don't. But this is always where ESO has had a lot of potential to shine. I do think the issues they had with subclassing and now having to go back in and put some different passives for pure class to make sure pure class and subclassing are on both on the same kind of page when it comes to damage or support or whatever kind of character you want to build or class you want to build is kind of telling how combat balance has been a problem over time. But I think ZOS could turn combat into a strength. Some players have mentioned before having set predictable balance cycles like every so many months instead of it being every single update. So let's say you have, for example, every 6 months you have a set predictable balance cycle where they're going to go in and actually adjust classes and combat and stuff like that. That is an option. Not necessarily that is the answer, but they could do something like that going forward. I have seen a lot of people talk about that over the years. I also think more clear class identity goals going forward is going to be a good thing. And I think they're doing that with the class refresh. I know it's going to take a lot longer than people want, but unfortunately, that's just kind of what we're having to go with. Also, when it comes to the public test server, I've seen a lot of people that go out and test this. A lot of the other content creators out there say they want the public test server changes to be more focused instead of kind of sporadic at times, and communicate why these abilities are being changed. I don't think they do a bad job. They're a whole lot better at communicating this past year than they have been before. But there's still a lot of players in the game that do not understand everything when it comes to these abilities, and reading the patch notes sometimes doesn't really give you a straight answer. Because as we know, sometimes the patch notes or just a post that the dev put out can be a bit wordy, and some people are kind of thrown off by what exactly all that means. So I do understand why some people in the community say they want a little bit more of a clearer answer, but also a little bit more of a just kind of honest, open answer and kind of less wordy, I guess, would be the easiest way to say that. The DK and the two-handed refresh shows ZOS is willing to make old things that we've had in the game for a long time modern. Now, whether everyone agrees with how the DK and the two-hand was handled, that's a different topic. But I think we can all agree that if this kind of refresh paired with transparency, the community will feel like they're part of the process instead of kind of being blindsided by some of these changes. And one other big one that I've seen a lot of people talk about over the years is player testing, things like the public test server, reporting bugs, giving feedback, and those same issues still going live. And that was a problem this time. This most recent update, of course, we've got with update 50. There's been a lot of issues. It seems like there's been more issues on the console side than the PC side. That is one reason I've said I always wish we had a console test server because I do play on console. I've played the game on console since it released on console. I do go in and actually play on the public test server on PC, but all of my gameplay here on the channel, of course, is from the PlayStation. And I know it's not really a feasible thing. There's no way we could ever have a public test server because it takes too long for everything to get certified from ZOS's end, then certified by PlayStation. It wouldn't have or wouldn't be able to be changed quick enough week in and week out when they need to update it. But it does seem like a lot of problems that happen on the PC side don't ever happen on the console side, or vice versa. Where a console will have some big problems, PC won't have as many problems. And I think this is also an area that ZOS can improve. And I think most people in the community will agree that some of these things we've seen creep into the game for years now, over and over and over again, no matter where it is, if it's a thing where you see it, one patch and then it's not there for a couple, but then it shows back up. They have talked about extending the public test server cycle. And I don't think that's ever going to happen because we know that we have now just gone back to that extra week that we used to have, but they said once crossplay is out, they're probably going to have to shorten it again. So that is not really an option. I think highlighting more community reported issues and marked them as fixed would be a big thing. They do a pretty good job of that, but there is some things sometimes you see where players report it or talk about it, and then it's never really mentioned if it has been fixed or not. They say they're working on it, they'll give us an update, and sometimes that update never comes and it just magically is fixed in game or is not. So I think better communication with that would be great. I wondered if they could run some type of stress test, and that would also be hard, especially on the console side, because you have to put in these updates and get them approved and all that through PlayStation or through Microsoft for Xbox. But running some type of stress test on some of these new changes may help out. I think really the good thing they have been doing, but they still can improve on, is maintaining a weekly known issue tracker. That way, everyone knows what's going on. They've done a really good job after an update comes out saying, these are the problems, this is what we're working on, and they kind of add to that list as the problems arise in game. And we talked about this a few days ago when I talked about some of the issues with Update 50. If ZOS shows that public test server feedback actually shapes that final patch and doesn't really just say, here it is, and now here's the problems, I think the trust process with the community will go a lot further. And I really do think release quality is the biggest issue just in general. Maintenance windows are long. Major updates often give us brand new bugs or bring back recurring bugs from past updates or hot fixes. I don't know exactly what ZOS is going to do to improve upon this. I think the best thing is transparency with the community and prioritizing stability over maybe new features. And I know that's not the most exciting thing within an update to get stability instead of features. But for me personally, I'd rather have a stable game than something coming in every update, but the game not running as intended. But the main thing here is post-patch performance reports, I think, would go a long way if we could get some more in-depth detailed ones every single time we have an update. Would be great for the community. And if ZOS can focus on stability first, I think players will see and feel the difference immediately. ESO does have problems. No one's denying that. But none of these issues should be a permanent thing. Every single one of them or at least do have a chance to be fixed and see a realistic solution, as long as the development team behind the game, want to make sure that these things are fixed. And the best way for that is, of course, the community to express their frustration if there is a problem. The foundation is there, the systems are there, the community is absolutely there. Now it's really just about ZOS executing all of these issues the community has talked about for a good long while. Of course, if you like the video, hit the like. If you have not subscribed yet, please do so, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.